Welcome to the latest episode of the Blazing Musket Podcast. We are live on YouTube for the first time, and we have gone to such lengths because, one, it's an interesting idea to try out, and two, John Morissey is booked on a podcast almost every single night of the week, like I mentioned on Wednesday's preview show, we will do whatever needs to be done to get John Morissey and his wealth of USL knowledge onto this podcast. So we are in for a treat tonight. For those of you that heard the first episode when John joined us back in preseason. He did an outstanding job kind of laying out the path ahead. And aside being completely totally wrong about Hartford Athletic, like the rest of us, got everybody ready for the season that is now coming towards the playoffs. So John, it's been in New England. This has been unquestionably the best summer of soccer that we've ever had, and it's being fueled almost entirely by the three professional USL teams that we have here. Obviously, we have the USL League Two, champions as well up in Vermont. But for you personally, outside of New England, what has been getting the most attention, most of your attention this year?
I think it's the level of parity you're seeing across the USL. Like in the Western Conference in the championship, for instance, there's, I think, 4 or 5 points between second place or third place and ninth. It feels like anything can happen at every level. No club is really out of the playoff race yet. And historically, we've not seen that. There have been haves and have-nots across the USL. It feels like when you get to September, the races are somewhat settled. So the fact that everybody has raised their game this year really has made it a fun season to cover on my side of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I know that you're you're on the USL show, which is a podcast. You also write for Backhill.com. What other you do? How many podcasts do you do? I feel like this is a recurring question. A lot of our guests are doing something almost every Sunday night of the week. But in addition to the USL show, in addition to Backhill.com, being pretty active on Blue Sky, where else can people listen to you?
Yeah, I do a podcast through Backheeled called This League, which is specific to the championship. Do it with Ryan Sikora, who calls Phoenix Rising games locally, and then Peyton Gallagher, who has been the voice of the Portland Hearts of Pine for much of this season on the broadcasts. So have a ton of fun. That's new this year. And then, like you kind of hinted at the top of the show, I'm guesting on things regularly. I plug that on social media. So, yeah. And of course, the Substack as well, where I really dig into League One, Championship, whatever is the stray thought of the week for me.
Oh yeah, sorry, I do read that. Yeah, it's funny. The back four comes out every week as well, right? That's another. Yeah, I really do enjoy. It kind of gets into the tactics, and again, really gets down into like the minutia of what a lot of these teams are doing. So honestly, it's all great stuff, and we do appreciate having you on the show, for the second time tonight. All right, so let's get on here. The USL Championship, we're going to bury, obviously, the big story, which is Hartford is in a cup final. But the USL Championship as a whole, we had you on in preseason. Now that the playoffs are in sight, is there a team in the Eastern Conference, Western Conference that has exceeded your expectations? A team that is just wherever they are, you never would have thought they would have been there, in 10 seasons, let alone one.
Yeah, I think FC Tulsa is the obvious answer to that question, leading the Western Conference right now. And this is a club that hasn't made the playoffs in, I think, 4 or 5 years. They've gone through a number of coaches, a number of sporting directors, and it feels like they've landed on something. Luke Spencer took over in the offseason, pretty recently retired, was a forward for Louisville City for a number of seasons. He, despite the fact that he was a striker in his playing career, has built this very aggressive defensive setup in Tulsa. You're typically seeing them run a back three. They're very physical. Obviously, what he's done with the system is important, but I think at the front end of things, Taylor Calahera, somebody who was a standout for, I think, NYCFC 2 in MLS Next Pro, like in the Golden Boot conversation there, has come over to the championship and really recreated that. It's a fun story for a team that's always been pretty well supported, but hasn't put a winning team on the pitch. So that, on both sides of things, is exciting. I think in the East, Hartford is the story. Loudoun United also deserves a shout out. That's a club that works with a bottom of the barrel budget. They've gone through an ownership change this year. I've talked about some of the unknowns on the sideline heading into next season for them. But they really have this can do attitude. They've come together. They play very attractive soccer. Like they're trying to possess the ball, break you down with a lot of passing. Abdelatif Abukora, the star player there, 20-year-old Egyptian kid on the left wing, really good scorer on his right foot. It wouldn't be surprising to see him earn a transfer move, and he's a major reason for why that Loudoun side has been such a success and really exceeded the expectations that were below the playoff line.
Well, another thing with Loudoun is like you said, there's stuff going on off the field. I believe at one point there was issues with with players simply like getting paid or just having like the
doing their own
things
laundry, not having health personnel. Yeah.
I mean, have you seen anything like this before? Where because we've seen USL teams obviously in that situation where things are looking pretty precarious and you don't know how much longer you're going to be around, but not also at the top of the table having a really good season at the same time. I mean, is this something that has occurred before, or is this really the first time a team is doing so well while you're sitting there saying, okay, but like, are they going to be around? Are they even going to have a team to take the field?
The only team I can think of is Northern Colorado in League One last year. About 2 months into the season, they just stopped paying salaries, and USL League One started to pay their players and coaches. They go on and win the Jägermeister Cup in its inaugural edition. They make the playoffs and really go at a title run, and then that team just folds in the off season. So, yeah, but I mean, most of the time when you see a situation like that, the team goes away, the players don't really have motivation. It feels like a mess, and Loudoun, who feels like, to their credit, they've solidified the new regime, which I think people have had doubts about. He's coming together and investing in this club. Feels like a lot of positive trends there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just because we saw that with was it Memphis? I'm going to get the numbers wrong. Not 901.
You got it.
Right?
Yeah.
Just disappeared off the face of the earth. It's and hopefully this is something that kind of smooths itself out as time goes on. But I mean, what has been on the field, right? What do you think has really been the key for Loudoun to have all this success? I mean, are they, like you said, they're playing in a good style? I mean, that sounds like maybe that's kind of challenging if a lot of coaches will say, well, hey, I don't have the players to play that way. These guys don't have any money. So, they must be doing something to make this all work.
Yeah, I think Ryan Martin, the coach at Loudoun, who's been there since 2019, is exceptional at what he does. He built this roster in tandem with Oliver Gage, who has now since left as the sporting director and is going to be running the expansion team down in Fort Wayne in League One. But Gage is really progressive with the way that he uses data in recruitment in a way that I think a lot of the rest of the USL maybe isn't up to par with quite yet. And so Loudoun knew exactly the archetype of player they wanted. They went out and found guys who could fit this very specific style. I don't know if it's one-to-one with the whole Moneyball comparison, but it's pretty spiritually similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, you really, if money is limited, you can't miss, right? You can't miss on 2 or 3 guys, or otherwise you've blown a lot of your budget. Do you think that not that extreme, but to a lesser extent, that's kind of the game in the USL Championship, and maybe even more so in League One? Like I keep thinking back to, look, not that Maxi Rodriguez has been a train wreck, but he was a highly influential player for several years for Detroit. When he moved to RAFC, I for one, and I think pretty much everybody was like, oh, this is a no-brainer, right? This is really going to change things. There's no way that this isn't going to be a team capable of scoring goals with somebody like him. But that now kind of looks like, maybe they just didn't identify, look, he's a talented player, but maybe not in the system that they have down in Rhode Island.
Yeah, and I mean, I think speaking to the Maxi point, that's what I was saying at the time was fantastic player, all league on his day. He's probably the 5th starting level midfielder you've got contending for the same position. So you have to be wise about the way you're using these resources. I think about a team like the Chattanooga Red Wolves in USL League One, perennially underfunded. That's a team with no star players, almost all of their best guys went to the championship or elite League One teams over the offseason. And Scott McKenzie, the manager there, knew exactly the type of player in terms of skill, but really mentality. Like Chattanooga is going to punt the ball down the pitch, play route one, be as physical as can be, and they have a real chance at ending up as the 1 seed in League One because they just recruited 23 players who are bought in and sprinting for 90 minutes. And that's some of the beauty of League One, right? Is that the talent level is surmountable in that way. But I think it speaks to the fact that you can win in a variety of ways if you're using your resources correctly.
Yeah, I do feel like that's. Look, there's a coach up here in New England, the coach of the Revolution, that he seems to come up with a totally different way of playing every 6 weeks, and look, it hasn't worked out, but do you feel like in the championship is that like do you see coaches that are able to do that are able to, well, we'll play this way for 4 or 5 weeks, then we'll kind of chop and change, and we'll play a couple different, like, is there teams like that are really flexible in what they do, or is it really, look, if you're going to be successful at this level, you've got to have a system, and you've got to play that system and stick with it?
I definitely think consistency is one of the driving factors between the best teams in the league. Tulsa, I would say, is a slight exception, and I've interviewed Luke Spencer. He's talked about the fact that he values adaptability, so you'll see them run a back four 1 week, go back three the next. Sometimes they're direct, sometimes they're possessive. But there are still consistent principles, right? They're a high-pressing team. They want to be in your face. It might look a little bit different in the way it manifests, but it is going to stay the same in terms of the greater philosophy behind what you're seeing. So yeah, for me, you have to have that driving idea if you want to win in the USL.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, take your point. It's the formation might change a little bit. The player, like, you might tweak things a little bit, but like the principles of what you're doing are consistent from 1 week to the next, because they don't have. I'm sure they have higher paid players, right? But they don't have. Well, we've got 3 TPs and 3 U22s, and those 6 guys they'll just kind of figure it out, and I don't think that there's that much of an extreme, but. Just to go back to the Western Conference a little bit, FC Tulsa, like you said, is a team that is doing better than expected. It's at 4 or 5 years without making the playoffs. I mean, that sounds like the Hartford story, but they've gone to a whole another level. Who else in the Western Conference? It looks like Hartford can't believe I'm saying this stuff. It looks like Hartford. Is going to be there in the playoffs. But who else might be the teams to look out for in the Western Conference?
Well, the team that Hartford's going to be playing in the final of the Jägermeister Cup, the Sacramento Republic, have rounded into form as of late. This is a team that I think everybody knew in the back of their head was going to be top 2 or 3 in the Western Conference. And under Neil Collins, who's new to the program this year at the head coaching spot, it took a couple weeks for them to really gel, find the players that were going to be their best 11. They're rolling at the moment. It feels like every game they're really putting a stranglehold on the match. Somewhat defensive-minded, but a lot of skillful players further ahead. I would be shocked to see them not make a playoff run. They're that good, and I think that much better than the rest of their competition. My kind of dark horse team that I've really taken a liking to is Lexington. They have just made the leap up from League One this season. Pretty much an entirely new roster. I think at this point they've either sold or loaned out every single player that was on the team last year and just decided we're starting fresh. They've signed Michael Edidokun, who was a very high MLS draft pick last year, for a transfer fee from Montreal. They just got Latif Blessing in the door. Their backline is a lot of young players who have stood out at other USL clubs. It feels like they're building for the short term. They're going to be competitive this year, but they've really got a blueprint to be at the top of the West going forward. And it's a level of forethought that I think is somewhat rare across the league, which makes it all the more impressive in my estimation.
Yeah, absolutely not. On Sacramento again, it's a good point. They are going to be playing. They are going to be playing Hartford. I think it's early October in Sacramento. So knowing how Hartford plays, knowing how Sacramento plays, probably a lot better than most of us. Myself, for sure. I mean, I occasionally catch some Ryan Spalding highlights. He's a guy that I enjoyed when he's with the Revs. But outside of being a Ryan Spalding fan, what is Hartford going to have in the way that Hartford plays? What are they going to have to do to go and pull off this win on the road and get the first trophy?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because they're pretty stylistically similar in terms of the shape, the emphasis on those transitional moments, whether it's Michigan Galena for Hartford or someone like a Russell Cicerone for Sacramento. You got to avoid the defensive mistakes. You got to stay clean on set pieces. I think that's what impressed me the most in the win in the semifinal against Greenville. That was a Triumph team that was going to sit back and be defensive, but really try to take their chances on the break. And Hartford mostly looked disciplined. They gave them very little in those moments. The back line held firm. You will have to do that on steroids against a team as clinical as Sacramento can be. But that's what we've seen for the last 2-3 months from Hartford, right? It's easy to focus on Dieng, who just got sold. It's easy to focus on some of the attacking talent. For me, the defense is kind of the story of this team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I saw a good portion of the Hartford game last night after I watched the very short shootout, the Rhode Island game. But I did feel like they were in control of the territory. They were well into the Triumph's half. But I did feel like they were trying different things. They tried to work it around. Okay, they couldn't do that. They put in. Then they would try like a cross from like a deeper position. Whereas I think sometimes in those moments, teams just keep trying to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over, and aren't able to break the door down and don't really want to try and try and break out and do something else. So I think that's. I think it's great. I think it's great that Hartford is. Look, they're having. I don't think it's arguable now. I think they're having the best season that they've ever had. But what did you think about Rhode Island? We'll talk about Rhode Island first. We have a question here from Sean Fechtel, fan of the show, sometimes a guest
Portland
of the show as
own,
well.
Yeah.
How many gallons of coffee milk will it take for Rhode Island FC to score a goal? Where are the tactics breaking down for the Amber and Blue? That's a great question. I mean, I think most people were reasonable in that, look, just because they went to the final in year one, it's not that easy, and they're not just going to come back and just immediately, go and take the next step and win the whole thing. But what can you put your finger on anything specific in terms of the frustration from their fan base really seems to be centered around, we just have games where it looks like we could play for 3 hours and we're just never going to score.
Yeah, I mean, I think in multiple facets of play, Rhode Island became a less aggressive team. Some of that was Maxi coming into the mix, and the decision with Maxi Rodriguez was we are going to play him upfield. He's going to play pretty much right underneath the striker or in this kind of tucked-in wing position. In Detroit, he was a lot more flexible as this deep-lying creator who could hit the long ball, support the press if he needed to. But by that repositioning, by the fact that you were missing J.J. Williams for a large portion of the early season, this team really lost some of the flair, some of the transitional excellence that they showed at the end of 2025. There was a real focus on trying to build out of the back, try to break teams down, which in a league like the USL, where you don't always have the most talented backline that is capable of beating defenders with a pass on the ground, I think it's led to some frustration and some slow moments. For me, this team barely moves without the ball, which is flummoxing when you think about how fluid they looked at the end of last season and when you look at the names on the team sheet. Someone like Noah Fuson, who can barely crack the lineup at this point, just feels like a different player when he's on the pitch. Guys like Jorge Quizera have been good, and yet in the fact that he constantly is switching between wingback and winger, never quite settles into a role. I like players like Amos Shapiro-Thompson and Clay Holstad. They are center mids being miscast in roles that maybe they don't have the flair and vivacity to fill within this team. And so it all comes together of you're not pressing, you don't really have the transition game, you're not trying to play over the top. all that's left is banging your head into the wall over and over again with the short passing game. And yes, this team has been good defensively, one of the best teams in the East in that regard, but it doesn't matter when you can't get over the line. And I still can't crack the nut of why Connor Smith has decided to change the style so radically from what worked in year one.
Yeah, because look, they got off to they got to a slow start last year, but no, nobody had high expectations. It seemed like they put a decent amount of money into the roster build for sure. But I think there was definitely an understanding of, okay, it's going to take time for Kano to figure this out, for the team to come together. But I don't feel like they had a ton of turnover from year one into year two, and I found it interesting to see, like, well, it looked like they had figured it out towards the end of the season, like you said, right? So it's like, not that it's easy, but like it's like just like the muscle memory of, hey, look, this is what we were doing. Like, let's go back and watch the film. Like, if it's the players that aren't doing it, and this is the part that I don't think anybody knows. We get a lot of stuff where the coach might say, well, look, I'm not telling them to be this passive, and I'm telling them they've got to move more, and It's like, all right, but that can only go on for so long, and it's not happening. That it's just tough to kind of put your finger on why that happens. But I mean, can you think of other recent examples where you would have seen a coach, seemingly he's got it figured out at the end of one season, comes back, and it's like, well, wait a minute, what happened? Why are we don't have to do this all over again, right? We don't have to do the slow start, fast finish every single year.
I hate to say that I can't think of another example, but I kind of can't think of another example. I suppose Tampa Bay last year, where they do have a little bit of turnover. That was a club in transition that had just made Robbie Nielsen, who was coming over from I think Scotland at the time. They made him their full-time manager, so he's taking over this team that had been a perennial giant in the East, and then all of a sudden the defense just stops working. It's the same faces, the same players, and they're making mistakes every single week. You couldn't really explain it. Tampa Bay, I think, ends up getting a home playoff game nonetheless. So it's not even the same magnitude as what we're seeing where Rhode Island legitimately could miss the playoffs. But examples are few and far between of this sort of thing happening.
Yeah. Well, I could be remembering incorrectly, but did Pittsburgh get off to a slow start last year and then kind of picked up steam? Is that I'm trying to?
You're right. They won the Players' Shield in 2023. The start to last season is bad, and then they just start ripping off goals. The defense comes together. It's kind of the classic Riverhounds formula. It's almost different there because Lily's been there forever.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, 2023, as good as it was, that felt like the exception to the rule rather than something that was the consistent standard. And I think everyone in Pittsburgh understood that at the time.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. At this point in the season, what would you rather have REFC's situation where, hey, look, we're a solid defensive team, we just haven't quite figured out how to gel going forward? Or would you, if you're a fan of the team, or you're the GM trying to decide, look, which way are we going to go here? Or would you rather have it the other way where, we're scoring goals left, right, and center, but we also are giving up goals left, right? You know what I mean? Like, what would you, if you could only have one side of the game clicking, where would you rather be at this point in the season? Where, hey, look, you could say if we squeak in, if this defensive, strength continues and we figure it out, we only have to figure it out for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, no, I think it is the defensive answer. I'm not going to say it's easier to solve the offensive question because we've got, 28 weeks of evidence that Rhode Island really hasn't been able to do that. But if you can rely on a defense, you're going to get enough draws, you'll maybe scrape away a couple wins to get into the postseason, and then anything can happen. Offense just tends to be fickle in a way that is a little bit mysterious. Your striker can go cold. It's a little bit less reliant on the system and the coaching. I think defense is controllable, and that makes it more of an attractive proposition if you've got to swing to one extreme.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we see coaches, when things are going bad, they say, okay, well, look, we're just going to bat down on defense because that we can, right? In theory, we can do that. And having coached for a long time, it's easier to get a team set up defensively and have a reliable, like, okay, we can defend in this way, and if the scoring just isn't coming, okay, like we can. That's always harder to figure out. There's no, like you said. I mean, I guess if you're an RAFC fan, I mean, I don't know how much longer you can hold out the hope that it's not just magically going to click one day. Like, they're going to come out this Saturday, put 4 goals past whoever they're playing, and then they're okay. Well, that's it. They're off to the races. So yeah, it's just interesting. They have the new stadium this year. Obviously, a lot of enthusiasm about that. They had a great year, which I think you need to have a good season early on to kind of get that buy-in, to get the fans coming back, and all that good stuff. But turning to Hartford, I mean, like, I was writing the show notes for this show, and I'm like I had to double check. I'm like, this can't possibly be right. Like, football must be wrong. There's no way that Hartford is in. Not only are they in 6th place, they're 8 points clear of Rhode Island. I'm like, that has to be wrong. I gotta go check another source here. I mean, it's like, it's crazy because it was the middle of July. The Bonanza had just they'd done a protest. They sent a letter to the club, put it out on social media, and they're basically just like, look, we're fed up. This team has basically been pretty miserable since it was created. We only made the playoffs during COVID when we just beat up on one team 6 times. We had a good finish to last season, but yet here we are, and that was look, July. I mean, look, July seems like a long time ago, but it's not. It's not even been 2 months. And we're talking about Hartford in a cup final in 6th place, and they're 8 points clear of their biggest rival. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and for me, it is a question of identifying the system and making sure that you've got an identity and you've got tactics that can support it. Hartford, really since last year as well, has been a team that can beat you on the counterattack. Dieng, Ingalina, the guys I mentioned earlier, Emmanuel Samadia at left wing back, who I think is incredible, maybe the best at his position in the league. Those are reliable offensive players that can beat opponents on the break with regularity. How can you fill out the rest of your lineup and build a formation that supports that? Maybe mid-June, Brendan Burke decides we're playing what I keep calling a 5-1-3-1. So you've got 5 defenders, you've got a defined holding midfielder who is there to just clean up danger, and then there's a lot of flexibility ahead of it. It tends to be that Ingalina kind of cheats ahead from that left mid spot. Junior Morera is very defensive-minded as a right mid. There's lots of little imbalances and wonkiness to the shape, but it just works in practice. I think what people can sleep on is that back line. Really, Jordan Scarlett, Joey Farrell, TJ Presthis, those sorts of players have stepped up to the table in a big way. Farrell, somebody who I think, again, doesn't get enough praise for the leadership he's shown all season long. Obviously a veteran of the USL. He's been around the block at multiple clubs. He sets the tone. He's quite aggressive in the way he plays, but I think players like Presthis, who I think this is his rookie season, looks like he's a veteran player. He's so understanding of when he needs to fill space, when he needs to step up in those moments. So they're providing the balance. The shape is there. The goals are still coming. We'll see what Haji Berry can add coming off an injury and on the wrong side of 30. But this team has the tools to really go on a dark horse run in the playoffs, if and when they make them.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, but it does seem like, kind of the story early in the season was, look, it's a thin squad. It's not the deepest squad, and that makes these 3-game weeks that they come across really tough. Or when we had Chris Belkey on, he was saying, look, there's games where there's academy kids on the bench, but they're not on the bench because it's like, this is your big day to step up. It's like, you're on the bench because we physically need someone to sit here, and it just So do you think there's been progress in that sense of a realization that, look, if we are going to be competitive, and they also were a team that said, hey, when this whole Pro Rel, USL, Premier League thing, we want to be a part of that. Do you think there's maybe been a realization that, okay, that's great that you want to be a part of it, but you're going to have to do a little bit more than 16-year-old academy kids getting thrown on the bench just so you can write some names down?
The interesting thing with Brendan Burke is that he's always been kind of a small roster guy. If he thinks that a player just isn't up to snuff or doesn't fit the system, he's not afraid to banish that guy to the end of the bench and not play him for the rest of the year, essentially. And I think 2024 was a season where Hartford could never find really the starting lineup, but those bench pieces that could come in and support what's happening. Now, Burke has the core that probably goes 18 deep. We've seen the investment from the club for exactly the reasons you're saying. This team realizes, okay, we've got something here. We're going to go out and get Haji Berry. We're going to fill out the bench with a number of players with experience in Next Pro, with experience across the championship. That's going to matter when you're getting into this stretch of the schedule that Hartford has made busy because they keep winning in the Jägermeister Cup. It's a good problem to have, but it is a problem. And so the fact that the front office has said, cool, go get Cameron Duke, who's a very versatile midfielder, go get Blues on loan from Colorado, I think that's just depth that you need for this stretch of the year. It's promising to see.
I mean, this is the thing with Hartford do you think that maybe that's part of the equation here is that Brendan Burke is in his second season, right, which doesn't always happen in Hartford, and the club is now seeing, like they've let him stay here long enough that they can see the vision, they can see what this guy is trying to do, and now they're saying, okay, we can see where us spending some more money and bringing some more players in is actually going to make a difference. Where maybe if you go back to, not to pick on Tab Ramos, but we'll pick on Tab Ramos.
Sure.
I mean, by June of his first season, everybody was like, "Well, this is a black hole. There's no point putting any money into this. This is going nowhere. Why should we make these mid-season moves?" Like, do you think that's maybe a part of what it was? Like, we've got to give this Brennan, he's shown that he can win elsewhere. We've got to give him the benefit of the doubt, give him some time. And now he's showing that actually, maybe we are only, one or two moves away.
No, I think that's 100% the case. And I think Hartford understands that this is an important moment for the club. The D1 thing is a component of that equation. But Hartford is unique in the fact that they've been a losing team for a number of years, and the fans, by and large, have continued to show up. I don't want to say that there is a time limit on that support because so much of lower league soccer is that sense of community and the marketing to families and all that. But losing matters. It can be a drag on your organization. So now that you've finally got a winner, go and support it. Put in the resources, reinvest the money that you're getting for Dieng probably. Why not try to take a step to that next level at a turning point moment for this organization and the USL at large?
Yeah, I think what Chris Belkey said when he came out, the president of the Bonanza, that's kind of along the lines of what he said. We have been supporting this team, year in and year out, but we've just gotten to the point where, their supporters. They said, only about half of us are coming out are even bothering to come out to the games. Like, why am I like? Yeah, okay, I'll go occasionally, but I'm not going to buy season tickets. Like, what am I buying? What am I buying season tickets for? So I think you're right? I think there is, we talk about how great it is to go to a game in Burlington, Vermont, how great it is to go to a game in Portland, and for sure it is a great time out. But they're both, Portland's having a good season, Vermont pretty reliably, they're also winning. Yeah, it's a great time. The atmosphere is fantastic, but the team wins more often than they lose, and that for sure has a kind of a factor. As time goes on, nobody wants to keep supporting a perennial loser. Especially if you're not born into it. I was born into being a Red Sox fan. I had no choice. It's just, this is just how life is apparently. But if you weren't born into being, we'll get to Portland now. If you weren't born into being a Portland Hearts of Pine fan, which nobody was, right? Like, no one was born into supporting that team. So after 3 or 4 years, if they don't have a reason, well, then I'm not gonna keep doing this. I'll just go back to doing whatever I was doing before. Another question from Sean, our good friend up in Maine. Does regionalizing USL League One make sense to cut travel costs, and what would that look like? Now, the biggest problem with League One, I'm going to assume, is it's not very big. there's not that many teams, so it makes all this stuff difficult. But next year, that is not the case, right? Next year there are, and we talked about this back in February. There's even more coming next year. So what does that possibly mean for the travel that the USL League One teams have had to do this year because it's there's so few teams?
Yeah, so one, self plug, I will be writing about this on Backheeled on the direction of where this league is going with the rapid expansion, so be on the lookout for that. Two, it's a tough debate for next season in particular because at least on paper you're adding 6 teams and subtracting 0. We'll see with the subtraction because it is what it is in lower league soccer, right? It makes it very hard to say we're splitting into conferences when the possibility of a single season round robin single table Premier League style is on the table with 20 clubs. It just makes a lot of sense. I've also heard that the Jägermeister Cup probably is just going to be going to a March Madness style single elimination, which really takes the burden off schedule-wise if League One did want to go that way.
Oh.
Long horizon, given how League One is trying to add 5 or more teams each year, at least we'll get an East and a West. I wouldn't be shocked to try to go even further than that. And it makes sense because the travel costs of sending FC Naples all the way over to Spokane and then all the way back, then up to Portland, that is a major stress for organizations that have salaries of $1 million or less typically, that are owned by people who don't have generational wealth in the same way that somebody that owns an NFL team might. It's a lot of people who are very invested in the community and the sport, but need a lifeline in terms of getting this to profitability. And I think regionalization is going to be massive for that effort.
Yeah, it is very interesting, right? Where it is a lower league. But that doesn't mean that the travel, you don't normally, I think your brain just automatically just goes straight to, like USL League 2, obviously is extremely regionalized, and there's no choice. Those guys aren't getting on planes and not getting on planes, not flying anywhere. Yeah, but that, like you said, right, that'll be interesting. They're adding 6, which is great, but we might not know until, December, January, if all the other teams are going to come back. It's not like they announced it ahead of time.
We'll probably know in November, and it'll be a shock of whoever it is. That's, again, just the way that it works at this level. But, yeah, it'll be unfortunate if it does happen.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But, like you said, and Jason Davis has he said the same thing almost every time he talks about it. Like, look, we can't just assume it's just a straight line up and it's just growth and growth and growth and more and nothing bad ever happens, right? Unfortunately, sometimes these things just don't work out. Like you said, these aren't owners with bottomless pockets that can stomach all these expenses, year over year. But to get to Portland specifically, how do you think that they've done so far this year? It's always tough being a brand new team. Like FC Naples definitely has their travel issues. They're tucked up away here up in Maine. So how do you think this has gone in year one?
Pretty much as well as you could hope for an expansion team, honestly. On the pitch and off the pitch, this team has been a smashing success. And I was lucky enough to get to go up there, and I think at the end of July, and see that environment, take in a game. It's unmatched at the USL level. That stadium is perfect. The fans are unbelievable. The sense of community is palpable. If you look at the attendance table, USL-wide, Championship and League One, Portland would be in the top 10, and that is capacity for where they're at. They could do more, frankly. On the field, this team is top 5 in League One in their expected goal difference. They've got a lot of games in hand right now and a lot of home games coming. There's a real chance they could get a home playoff game. What Bobby Murphy has done to, I keep coming back to it, but instill a very specific style, set up some of the talented attackers that this team has to play with a lot of freedom, has been very impressive to see. Again, I don't think you could ask for much more if you're a Hearts of Pine supporter.
No, I mean look, I haven't. There's too much soccer, but every time I've watched them play, it's been enjoyable. I mean, it's I think it's a way of playing, particularly in attack, that it's not always successful, but they definitely speed things up, right? They don't.
For sure.
We hear so much about these teams just kind of meandering and playing around the back and taking their time and poking and probing. There's nothing wrong with that when it works, but I find it refreshing almost, considering that the team that I do watch every week. I do find it really refreshing that they just go. The ball goes, the players go, and like you said, somebody like Ollie Wright, watching them have, the thing about him too is interesting. I don't know if this is something specific to like Bobby Murphy, but I feel like early in the season, Ollie was kind of struggling a little bit, maybe taking too many touches, a little bit, too much here and there, and I was kind of like, this guy kind of seems to think he's got a lot more in his locker than maybe he actually does. But I was, turned out to be totally wrong. He kept him in the team, kept playing him, and then I saw another game. I can't remember what it was. It was sometime over the summer, where he bangs in a hat trick, and it's like, oh, okay, all right, now it clicks, right? Now you see what Bobby Murphy must have been seeing in training to keep putting this guy out there, knowing I know what this guy's capable of, and it's gonna come. But is that kind of the impression that you get as well, that he really lets these guys go out there and it's without the expectation that, look, if you don't produce this week, you're on the bench?
I think it is a real relationship and a testament to the relationships that they've built there. And Ollie Wright is the perfect example. He was given the time and the reps to figure out what his fit was in the system and show off the talent that I think everybody knew he had. And we're to the point now where Ollie Wright is willing to come off, get subbed out of the game a week ago against Greenville because Portland knows that they can exploit a matchup. They come back from a 2-1 deficit and win that game against the Triumph without Ollie Wright on the pitch. And Ollie Wright isn't sitting there pouting because he was withdrawn. He understands that this is a team effort. And I think that's really the ethos that you get across the board. You're so right to talk about the verticality, the speed of this style. Portland wants to go at you hard. It's a fast-paced game. But they know when they need to slow down. They've got the defensive principles. It's rare to see teams look this connected in year one. And I think Westchester is an interesting flip side to that coin. They ostensibly are playing very similar soccer, and they are dead last in League One because they can't defend. They don't have that same level of balance. It just goes to show that Bobby Murphy has really been incredible this season so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's been impressive to watch them play and have a good year, and I think it's just, I went to one of their training sessions, and I don't know what my expectations are when I go to a training session with a professional team, that there's going to be some crazy thing going on that I've never seen before. But it's like they train on that on that high school field. The day I was there, they only used half a field. Like again, it seems like, and I talked to him about this too, and he said that he really focuses on the principles, right? Just these kind of broader, we're trying to do this, we're trying to do that, not trying to get it down to such a granular level. And like you said, it doesn't mean it's going to work, but I do think when it does work, they're a tough team to game plan against, right? Like again, you can't just say, well, if we shut down this guy, well then forget it, that's it. They're done. Like with the Revs, if you take Carlos Hill out of the game, you don't really have anything else to worry about. They seem to be a little bit more dynamic, but like you said, Westchester, it's not really similar ideas.
Right.
But not similar results.
But the execution isn't there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But now, who else in League One? Whether it's results or just when you watch them play, you enjoy watching them. Like a team that, like, if you're going to pick out another game in the next couple of weeks, before the playoffs start, that isn't a Portland Hearts of Pine game, who would be someone to watch? And again, maybe because they just get results, or maybe just because they're entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in on the Spokane Velocity. One, because Lee Vaidman, their coach, has been very nice to me over the years. But two, they're just attractive soccer. You can see that system working, and as you watch them play, it's a very clean and very aggressive defensive 4-4-2. Then they let one of their fullbacks just rip up the sideline, and it's a back three in possession. They've recruited it very smartly. For me, David Garcia is the best center back in League One, and somebody that is incredible with the ball at his feet at that position. They're methodical, they are patient, and at the end of the day, they win a lot of soccer games. I think my chaos pick would be Texoma. I don't think Texoma is very good, but they are very fun. And one way or another, there will be a lot of goals in a Texoma game. Sometimes it's their counterattack that's doing the job. They also just lost 5-0 to Omaha last weekend, so you can kind of see the flip side of the coin there.
Yeah.
So they're just the pure entertainment value team for me.
Yeah, I think that's always interesting. Anytime I'm trying to watch, a random game of the weekend, that's one of the things I'll look for. It's like I just want to find a team that scores lots of goals and gives up lots of goals. Just as like a neutral observer, I just chaos is great if you're not interested in one team or the other. Coming out with a win. But yeah, it's funny. The smoking velocity. I don't know why. I love that name, and for like no other reason than it's a great name. I like want them to be a successful team. But anyway, that has nothing to do with anything else at all. But yeah, no, for sure. I think it's going to be very interesting to see, how Portland does, and if they can get a home playoff game, especially with that narrow field, with the crowds that they get, I think they could be a very tough out. I've got another question here from Sam Tracy. John, you've been around the block more than a few times, which is, I'm sure, meant as a compliment. Going into the winter, what will it take for Portland to attract/retain players in such a high turnover league, such as USL One? And I wanted to ask you about this too, as well. Like, do these teams have to go into the season with the understanding of, if anybody has a really good year, they're gone? Like, what are the odds that they can, like an Ollie Wright, what are the odds that they can keep him around for another year? I mean, is it just take one phone call from one championship team? It's like, well, hey guys, what can I say? I got to go.
I think there is less interleague movement than you might expect. You'll only see, I don't know, 15, maybe maximum 20 guys make that jump in a given offseason. So that's like one per USL League One team, give or take. Portland is in an interesting position where someone like Ollie Wright has spent time in the championship before, so there's game tape in that context. He feels like a natural player to be targeted by the championship. I will say, when I was out in Portland and talking to some people on the staff, there's a real sense that players like Masashi Wada, for instance, they're just in love with Portland. They're in love with the environment, and that's meaningful. Portland is also in the catbird seat financially, where between the merch sales, what they get attendance-wise, they're in a different echelon compared to the rest of League One in terms of being able to pay players and retain them. You can definitely get a bump in salary by going to the USL Championship. That's no secret, but it's not as if it's a difference of 5 times over. Like, it's a matter of a couple tens of thousands of dollars, which is big, but when you've got resources like Portland, maybe not that big. So if they want to keep a player around, unless it is just an offer you can't refuse for the guy who has higher ambitions, I would feel pretty bullish about Hearts of Pine keeping the players they want to keep.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's we don't really get any real figures. I think people that follow, not even necessarily MLS, but people that follow other sports, like, if you're a Celtics fan, I mean, like, to the penny, how much all these guys are making, what they're like. It's all out there, right? But I always wonder, like, what is the difference between, if Portland is a bigger budget USL League One team, what does that mean compared to a USL Championship level team? Like, are we talking about, like, is that why you think that there's maybe only 15 players that make that jump a year? It's because, look, I'm pretty happy where I'm at, and we're talking about maybe $10,000-$15,000, which, I mean, that's not nothing. But like you said, you think there are players that will stay somewhere that they're happy and take a little bit less because it's not this stratospheric difference?
A lot of it can depend on setting and city and where you're comfortable. It is more of a disparity than you might think when you think about it en masse. Like, the average championship team, and this is just me going off of the dome, not doing real math, probably has twice as much of a salary load as a League One team. But if you think about the top 10 guys in a League One organization, they are making comparable to a mid-tier championship player. So it does wash out to a certain degree. At the same time, if you're a player at the level of an Ollie Wright, for instance, and the championship comes calling, they are probably coming with an offer that is a meaningful upgrade on what you're making already. So it tends to be this effect of the best players are getting selected and getting that raise because they are so talented. But yeah, it's a complicated question because it just varies so much from city to city.
Yeah, and no one knows, right? There's no definitive.
Right.
Well,
Oh, for sure.
he got offered 75,000 and he took 80. You know, like I mean, nobody, no one really know. Well, the people that do know don't tell anybody anyway. So
Yeah, the only people who know are agents, and yeah, they're not about to share their clients' salaries out loud.
yeah, exactly right. I mean, basically, if you don't know, then no one does, right? No one on the outside has any real idea. Now, what about we just saw Hartford, their leading goal scorer is off to MLS. I don't see that happening all that often. I mean, do you think there are maybe more players in the championship that could or should have the opportunity to go to MLS, or because I always think of somebody like a Ryan Spalding, right?
Sure.
I thought Ryan Spalding was a pretty good backup, pretty good guy to have around for an MLS team. He's a good outside back. You need someone to maybe do a little bit more going forward, going backwards the last 20 minutes of a game. He can help an MLS team win. He's not gonna be an out and out starter and one of the best players in the league, but he can help a team. And he goes to Sacramento and he's in the team most weeks. And I mean there are more players like that, and it just doesn't happen for whatever reason.
Well, I think the thing with Spalding is he's been benched as of late. Like he is a backup for the Sacramento Republic as we head into the home stretch, and I think
Which seems crazy. Yeah.
And it tells you about the talent level, right? Like someone like Spalding is the perfect example of a tweener between the leagues. There are 50 other guys who are at that same talent level who, in my estimation, could compete and be a useful player in MLS. We have seen a slow trickle over the years. It's kind of been an odd set of players. A lot of goalkeepers, a handful of guys who went to DC United for some reason. But you think about like Taylor Davila in Louisville. He was somebody who was in the LA Galaxy system with LA2. He has been a perennial all-league player, can do everything you want out of a center mid. He's maybe not that athletic, and he doesn't have the look of somebody who's going to tear you apart, and I think that counts against him. Someone like a Taylor Calhera, who I mentioned, was in the NYCFC2 system, winning Golden Boots in Next Pro. I don't quite know why somebody who can finish, who can press, who can bring teammates into the game isn't at least getting a shot at the end of the bench in MLS. So yeah, for my money, a lot of USL players could contribute, but the pipeline is broken. MLS teams don't want to have to pay a transfer fee to get a player that would probably be a rotation piece for them. And it just ends up kind of being this walled off environment where you don't see a lot of give and take between the two.
Yeah, because like I said, I always just kind of wonder about that. I see something like, well, for sure these guys could play in MLS, but again, I guess you make a good point there. If they have to pay a transfer fee, it's like, well, look, we're constricted enough as it is. We're not going to play we don't want to pay a transfer fee for a backup. Do you think that maybe there's situations where, like you said, okay, the guy was playing for an MLS team's second team, didn't make the jump to the first team. Now he's in a championship. Do you think that maybe it kind of counts against them? It's like, well, he was in a system with an MLS team. It didn't work out. So, why are we going to go and take a chance on this guy, a second time around? If he was playing for NYCFC too and was doing that good, well, he would just be with NYCFC.
I think that is definitely part of the story. And I think by and large, there's this idea that somebody who is in the USL is a lower league player, and it plants this seed of doubt if you're in MLS. And to be fair, MLS teams have taken a step up in terms of scouting internationally, investing resources in their own academies. They have found ways to get useful players. that squeezes out the USL as a source of talent and makes this problem even more intractable. But yeah, for sure, a lot of it is just perception of, oh, he couldn't cut it coming out of college, coming out of the academy.
Yep.
What makes us think he could do it now?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. So I mean, I do find myself though really enjoying almost any time I put on a USL game or a USL League One game, whichever one is Championship, League One. But you personally, I mean, what keeps you at this? I mean, I don't know that you can have a higher level of interest in these two leagues without owning a team. So what is it about these two leagues? Aside from it's not MLS, it's not big transfer fees, it's not all this noise. It's just teams playing soccer, and they're being played by guys that are on like reasonable, normal human amounts of money.
Yeah, I mean, the sense of community that comes along with it, and the fact that on my own, in a personal sense, I've been involved with it enough that I know a ton of people solely from talking about soccer on the internet, and I really value what I get out of that. But it goes back to the basics of how I got into this sport, frankly. I grew up in Indiana, in Indianapolis, until I was 18. When Indy 11 came around and I was just getting into the sport, I was hooked on that club in particular, and I didn't really care that they were in the NASL at the time, and I followed them along into the USL. Well, then my family up and moves to Phoenix. Suddenly I've got this interest in Phoenix Rising. It felt like a league that I was familiar with, and as somebody also who was very interested in baseball stats, that sort of thing growing up, there was this nascent world of statistics for soccer that appealed to me. So I combined those two interests. The community came from there. And I probably just couldn't give it up at this point because it's so ingrained in me that I'm doing it, I'm covering it, I'm watching as much of this as I can.
Yeah, no, I mean, that Jesus, you get me choked up. No, no, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's what we're seeing definitely up in Vermont and in Portland, right? That just this, it doesn't matter. We don't care what level, what league, how much you get. Like, we don't care about any of this stuff. It's good soccer. It's a good time. It's a great time out. It's a good community, and everyone's really enjoying themselves. And look, I mean, the world that we live in, if you can find a way to have a good time and enjoy yourself for 2 hours, it's at a reasonable price. That's a pretty tough commodity to come across. All right, John. Last thing here, we are going to try and generate some future content in the present. Who is going to come out on top in all three? Championship, League One, and who's gonna come out on top of the Jägermeister Cup?
In the championship, I've weirdly not talked about Louisville much at all. I think they're just due. They have been knocking on the door for a couple years now. Danny Cruz has this team cooking. There is a worry about the health of Philip Goodrum at striker. I think he'll be fine in time for the playoffs, and they've got solutions anyway, so going with them. I mentioned Spokane in League One. They, as an expansion team, made a dark horse run to the title game last season. It feels like they've learned the lessons. They've improved where they need to improve. When I consider League One, I don't think there's a team with less flaws than Spokane, and that matters a lot in the postseason. In the Cup, why not Hartford? They've had the dark horse narrative. Right, yeah. I think that in a matchup against Sacramento where it is two very similar teams, Hartford has the talent to do the job. We've seen them win ugly. We've seen them win with a lot of goals. Hey, I think it's their year. Something about this team.
Yeah, no, it's been wild, honestly. All right, last one. Rhode Island FC. One more answer here. Playoffs, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Barely.
Well, look, I mean, it's got to be driving them crazy now to be having this whole rivalry's been flipped upside down on them. I mean, they were having it pretty good in year one, and I think they're kind of getting the sense of what life is like on the other side pretty quickly here. But all right, John, look, we really appreciate you coming on the show a second time. Really appreciate you coming on, doing this live with us the first time here. Definitely something we look forward to doing again. You talked about the podcast that you are on. When can people catch those podcasts. We know that you're you're out there on Monday night, Tuesday night. So where can they find you on Monday? Where can they find you on Tuesday?
So USL show live on Tuesday nights. We're talking all things USL, League One, Championship, Super League, the whole shebang. We record this league on Monday nights. It will come out at some point later in the week because we try to produce it. I'm not going to pin down a date because I don't know a date. What I would invite you to do is follow me on Blue Sky, follow me on Twitter, because I will be posting whenever anything is going live. You can also find anything I'm writing. I'll post it there as well. So, yeah, make sure you're following on the socials. You'll get random clips of USL goals. You'll get the writing. You'll get the podcasts.
And the stuff you do on Substack as well. Do you You get that out there?
You betcha. If I'm writing it, I'm posting about it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, good stuff. And of course, if you are enjoying this show as well, of course, as I remember once a month to remind all of you, please do like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. We would love any and all feedback. We really do appreciate it. We do appreciate anyone that has tuned in to watch this show, has downloaded it over the last 6 months. It's been a ton of fun. This is a lot of fun tonight as well. So please do continue to do all those things, and do want to let everyone know that Sam Minton, the executive producer of this show, is backstage, making sure that this is all going smoothly, and it seems like it has. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Sam and thank him for all of his help with this show. And of course, all of his great work at the Blazing Musket that only Sam can do. So thank you all for joining us tonight. If you are listening to this on Friday morning or Saturday, we do again appreciate all of you that have continued to follow this podcast and listen to it week in and week out. And